Dandelion Princess here, and welcome to another episode of Spotlight, where I shine the spotlight on things I normally don't talk about here on the channel. Today, I'll be shining the spotlight on the webtoons comic, Lore Olympus. This is an exciting one for me. I've been wanting to talk about this comic for quite some time now. Honestly, even to this day, I don't read a lot of webtoons. There's only a couple stories that upload weekly that I follow. But Lore Olympus is on a completely different level for me. I read this thing religiously. I have a problem, guys. So to go in a little bit about what Lore Olympus is about without really spoiling it, it is a modern retelling of the Greek mythology story of Hades and Persephone. Now, the abduction or taking of Persephone is a pretty well-known story within Greek mythology. And let me tell you, the creator for this webtoon has definitely done her fair share of research on Greek mythology, though she's added her own little flair to the story and has not only put these Greek gods and goddesses in a modern environment, she's added a bunch of neat little details and for lack of a better word, lore behind this universe that she's created. As someone who loves Greek mythology and wishes that there were tons of more movies, shows, and books about it, Lore Olympus is really a breath of fresh air. I never know what to expect next from the series or what is going to be changed from the actual mythology. This comic has some really great world building, and honestly, it just feels like such a real environment. Moving on to the most important thing, in my opinion, when it comes to storytelling, the characters. Boy, do I love these characters. With Greek mythology, or any kind of mythology really, I always find it really fun and interesting to see what creators do with these characters, these well-known gods and goddesses. Hades is especially one that I am always extremely interested to see how he's portrayed. I blame Hercules for my instant interest in this character.
You finally made it. How are things in the underworld?
Well, they're just fine. You know, a little dark, a little gloomy, and as always, hey, full of dead people. What are you gonna do?
Hades was just such an interesting and fun villain in that movie. And really ever since then, if you say a story involves Hades in it, it most likely has my attention. Lore Olympus is no different. Hades is an extremely fascinating character in this series with so many layers. He's definitely very morally gray. Though in Lore Olympus, he is mainly one of the good guys, and the intention is to make you want to root for him, which technically you do. But he definitely has his share of issues and his darker side. He is, of course, still the Lord of the Underworld. Going on to Persephone a little bit, the other main character of the story, I find it really interesting how much I actually like her, just because in most stories, she's normally not that engaging for me. But there's just something about how she's portrayed in Lore Olympus that makes her really interesting. That's all I can really go into right now for those two, because I really don't want to spoil anything about their journey or anything that's happened to them in the comic. The series is, of course, also filled with some of the other gods and goddesses and other side characters and sort of side stories that are going on as the story of Hades and Persephone is playing out, which I really like, and all the characters are pretty interesting. I never really get mad when the story shifts to one of the side stories from the main story, because I really like rounding out the character development for the side characters and the world building that it helps with. What's really cool is these mythical beings are largely based in reality for this story, which makes them extremely relatable. Now, before I move on to the spoiler portion of this video, I do want to sort of warn anyone who's now interested in reading this comic. It does touch on some pretty sensitive topics, to say the least. Though I think these topics are really good to talk about. I know that type of thing isn't really for everyone, and it could definitely be a trigger for certain people who have gone through these sort of similar experiences, and overall, I just know that it's not for everyone. But if you're like me and just think that that kind of enhances the story and, makes the characters more interesting, then you should really like this comic. So I've gone ahead and put a link into the description for this comic because it is completely free to read on webtoons, which is really great. And I definitely do plan to talk about this series more here on the channel, actually. And not even to mention that Lore Olympus is going to get its own TV series. No idea when, but I can definitely say that I will be covering it whenever it does appear. With all that being said, moving on to the spoiler portion now. So anyone who hasn't read Lore Olympus, get out. First off, I am honestly really surprised at how quickly I got attached to Hades and Persephone's relationship. They really are cute together, and it's a necessity for this story because so much of it revolves around them and their relationship. Throughout the comic, obviously, they have some super cute moments. One of my favorites is when they kiss for the first time. It was just sort of like unexpected to me for it to be in that moment, but I really loved it. I just love the attention to detail that this series has. It's written in a way that you don't have to know every single Greek myth to enjoy the comic, which is really nice, but I definitely feel like you do get rewarded for knowing these Greek myths. Whenever a new character gets introduced, you can kind of already know where their story is gonna go if you know the myth that they're related to. Take Mint, for instance. And yes, I realize I'm probably butchering her name. She, of course, is from mythology, and in most of the stories, she is involved with Hades for a time. And she does get turned into Mint in her story. Depending on which version of the story you read, sometimes it is Persephone who turns her into Mint, and other times it's Demeter, Persephone's mother. And then there are characters like Echo. If you know anything about her rather kind of tragic story, you'll kind of have an idea of what is going to happen to her. And that's just something that I really enjoy. Beyond that, there are just some really funny moments in this comic. It definitely has its serious moments and, you know, its emotional moments, but it's always able to come back around and give you a laugh. The series, of course, has some very awesome, memorable characters, but I also do like the villains of the series. They're the kind of villains that you love to hate. Every time Apollo comes onto the scene, I just want to punch him in his smug little face. Mint also got under my skin, you know, back before she got turned into Mint. And of course, there are definitely some really big threats coming along. I'm honestly super interested to see where they go with Kronos. Just from what we know so far, it's very interesting to me. I always love when we get flashback episodes or we get more details about what happened in the old days. Honestly, it's really made me like Hera a lot more. So in the beginning, I wasn't quite sure how to feel about Hera. I mean, she's not like a bad character or anything, but she just wasn't all that compelling to me. But as the series has progressed and we kind of see more of her backstory and also see how willing she is to help Persephone, I've come to really like her and appreciate her. She is a straight up savage sometimes, and I don't know, I love it. Overall, Lore Olympus is definitely my favorite webtoon, and I'm so excited to see it actually become a series at some point. There has been no confirmation on where the TV show is gonna go, be it Netflix, HBO, maybe Disney Plus. We also have no real dates or any such things to give us an idea of when to expect the TV series. All that's really known about it is that it's being picked up by the Jim Henson Company and that it's going to be an animated series, presumably keeping a similar art style to the comic. So hopefully going into the next year here soon, we will get a little bit more information on it, but we'll just kind of have to see what happens. But what are your guys' thoughts on Lore Olympus? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you guys next time.